Michelle and Barack Obama are not shy about their love and affection for each other.
For the past 25 years, you have not only been my wife and mother of my children, you have been my best friend.
Barack Obama shocked everyone with news that no one had seen coming. His perfect image might be hiding a broken marriage. The former president, famous for his strong speeches and charm, has left people stunned with talk that he and Michelle may be living apart. The dream couple? Maybe not. Tune in to expose the signs that have been there, missed events, cold messages, and years of struggle that may have been too much. The hidden cost of Barack Obama's rise. Michelle Obama has always kept it real, and in her book, she didn't sugarcoat the tough years in their marriage. Raising kids while he was chasing his political dreams? It wasn't easy. For a whole decade, things were rough. It turns out even the picture-perfect Obama marriage had its cracks. They went to counseling, worked on it, and made it through. But was that the full story? But there was a moment when everything almost fell apart. One decision that could have changed everything. Lately, whispers are getting louder. The idea that the Obama marriage is rock solid is starting to seem more like an image carefully maintained rather than reality. People are starting to notice things. Michelle missing key events, his oddly distant birthday message to her, and persistent rumors that they've been living separate lives. Are they still the power couple everyone believed them to be, or is it all just for show? The signs have been there for a while. When he was first making his way into the political sphere, Michelle was often described as the grounding force in their marriage. She managed the household, raised their daughters, and made personal sacrifices so he could chase his ambitions. But the imbalance never really shifted, even as he rose to the most powerful office in the world. The pressure, the isolation, and the public expectations placed a strain on their marriage that most couples could never survive. Alex McNear, his first serious girlfriend, shared deep conversations with him about race, politics, and philosophy. Their connection was strong, but like most young love, it faded. Then came Genevieve Cook, who left behind a diary full of insight into the young man, ambitious, thoughtful, and restless. But the real shocker? Sheila Miyoshi Yeager. Sheila wasn't just another girlfriend. She was someone he loved deeply, so deeply that he proposed to her twice. The first time, her family said no. The second time, she turned him down, saying his growing political ambitions were changing him. Soon after, he left for Harvard, and their relationship was over. But she saw something back then that everyone is seeing now. He was crafting a persona, shaping his public image, and making decisions that would eventually make him president. But at what cost? The way he navigated his relationships says a lot about the kind of man he was becoming. He wasn't just someone looking for love. He was someone looking for an identity, and his partners played a role in helping him define himself. But as his ambitions grew, personal relationships became secondary to the bigger goal. It begs the question, how much of his life was truly authentic, and how much was calculated? It raises an uncomfortable question. How much of his public image was built, not just lived? If he was willing to let go of love to shape his political career, what else has he carefully curated? And if personal sacrifices were made for the sake of his future, what does that say about the choices he's made in the years since? Sources close to the Obamas claim that their marriage has been a balancing act for years. The demands of public life forced them into roles they might not have chosen for themselves otherwise. Michelle has expressed time and again that she never had an interest in politics, yet she was thrust into the spotlight as America's first lady. Now that the obligations of office are over, is she finally ready to reclaim her own identity, even if it means stepping away from him? Insiders are starting to suggest that the Obama marriage might be more about maintaining appearances than love at this point. Some say they're waiting for the right moment to announce a split, perhaps after the next big election, to avoid making waves. Others think Michelle's rumored interest in politics could be a factor. A public breakup wouldn't just affect his legacy, it could change the trajectory of her potential career too. The speculation is rampant. Could they be waiting for their daughters to be fully settled in their careers before making a move? Could Michelle's own ambitions be pulling them in separate directions? And if they do split, what does that mean for the Obama brand? Then came an old interview clip where Jennifer got noticeably awkward when his name was mentioned. Her stammering response only fueled speculation. Is this just wild gossip, or is there something to it? The cracks were showing, missed events, distant gestures. The truth was slipping out. The carefully built legacy is unraveling. Then came the Valentine's Day post. Barack shared a message celebrating decades with Michelle. Publicly, it was a touching tribute, but critics smelled something else. The timing was too perfect, they said, appearing just when whispers about their marriage were at their loudest. Michelle's absence from major public events, including Jimmy Carter's funeral, only fanned the flames. Barack's interactions with Donald Trump at the same event raised eyebrows further. Was this a heartfelt moment or a calculated move to deflect rumors? The debate raged on, and the internet wasn't buying simple answers. Back in 2009, Obama walked into the White House with the weight of history on his shoulders. The first African-American president, a symbol of hope and change, with approval ratings through the roof. He tackled a financial crisis, expanded healthcare, and promised to bring transparency to the government. But power and transparency rarely mix well. Behind the curtain, his administration was running a very different show. He posted executive orders online, claimed to open government processes, but when it came to leaks, his administration turned ruthless. The crackdown on whistleblowers was aggressive, using century-old espionage laws to silence those who expose the government's inner workings. National security or suppression? The answer depended on who you asked. Then Edward Snowden shattered the illusion. He exposed how deeply the NSA was spying on everyday Americans. Suddenly, Obama's accountability pledge looked shaky. His defenders claimed he was balancing security and privacy, but his critics weren't convinced. The man who once championed openness seemed increasingly comfortable with secrecy. The economy was another battlefield. Obama inherited a disaster, and his response was controversial. Unlike European leaders slashing budgets, he flooded the economy with spending. Hoping to jumpstart recovery, he set up commissions, proposed reforms, but Congress dragged its feet. Debt skyrocketed, and by 2010, frustration boiled over. The midterms delivered a brutal wake-up call. Republicans stormed the House, fueled by anger over the economy and Obamacare. Obama called it a shellacking. The fights over policy turned uglier, with Republicans blocking him at every step. Bringing both sides together was supposed to be his strength, yet Washington doesn't play fair. His compromises made him look weak to some, too extreme to others. By the time his presidency ended, America was more divided than ever. Democrats still cheered him, independents wavered, and Republicans shut the door on him completely. Approval ratings bounced back toward the end, but the country wasn't buying his unity message anymore. Then there were the scandals, the policies that never quite delivered, the moments of political theater that made people question if anything had truly changed. Obamacare passed, but faced years of legal and political battles. Wall Street got reforms, but the banks that crashed the economy were still standing. Immigration policy shifted, but deportations hit record highs. Climate change saw executive actions, but real transformation remained out of reach. As new details emerge, the conversation never stops. Was he a visionary leader navigating impossible challenges, or just another politician who knew how to play the game? Time will decide, but one thing is clear. Obama's story is far from over. His time in office was marked by a series of global challenges that shaped the course of modern politics. From conflicts in the Middle East to tensions with Russia, his foreign policy was a tightrope walk between diplomacy and firm action. The Arab Spring saw U.S. intervention in Libya, a move criticized for leaving behind chaos rather than stability. Relations with Russia grew colder, especially after the annexation of Crimea and election interference allegations. His famous red line on Syria's chemical weapons turned into a diplomatic debacle, reinforcing claims that his administration lacked decisive action in global crises. Domestically, issues of race and policing exploded into national conversations. The deaths of Black Americans at the hands of law enforcement led to protests, civil unrest, and a resurgence of the racial justice movement. Obama's responses, often measured, left both sides unsatisfied. Activists wanted stronger action, while critics accused him of fueling division. The legacy of these moments still lingers, shaping political discourse and policy debates today. Gun control became another defining battle of his presidency. Mass shootings in schools, churches, and public spaces reignited calls for reform, but legislative action repeatedly stalled. Executive orders were signed, town halls were held, but Congress remained gridlocked. Despite public outcry, substantial change never materialized, leaving the issue unresolved. The Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, became one of his most significant legislative victories and most controversial policies. While millions gained access to healthcare, rising premiums and legal battles tarnished its success. The law survived multiple repeal attempts, but its long-term viability remained uncertain. Republicans made dismantling it a central campaign promise, ensuring that healthcare remained one of the most polarizing issues in American politics. The 2016 election saw Obama's influence tested. He campaigned for Hillary Clinton, warning against a Trump presidency, yet his efforts couldn't stop the political shift. The election outcome was a direct repudiation of his policies for some, while others saw it as proof that progress in politics is never guaranteed. The transition from Obama to Trump marked one of the starkest ideological shifts in modern history, highlighting the deep divisions within the country. Post-presidency, he stepped into the role of global statesman, writing books, giving speeches, and mentoring young leaders. Yet, controversy never strayed far. Every statement, every appearance fueled speculation about his continued influence in politics. Some see him as a guiding voice for the Democratic Party, while others argue he represents the old guard unable to keep up with new progressive movements. With shifting political landscapes and ongoing debates about his tenure, Obama's legacy remains a topic of intense analysis. His presidency reshaped domestic and international policy, but questions about effectiveness, transparency, and leadership style ensure that his impact will be debated for generations. Whether history views him as an exceptional leader or a skilled politician navigating an unforgiving system, his influence on modern governance is undeniable. Barack Obama had always been a political heavyweight, but nobody expected him to shake the entire country like this. Long after leaving the White House, he was still pulling strings, still shaping the game, still making sure his voice echoed across the political landscape. But this time was different. He wasn't just supporting a candidate or endorsing a cause. He was about to change the entire system. Obama's legacy was shifting. He took control, ready to shape what came next. Power move changes everything. For years, he had played the role of a behind-the-scenes influencer, whispering into the ears of power players, making sure his vision for America didn't fade. But as the 2024 election cycle rolled in, everything shifted. The country was a mess, divided, frustrated, exhausted. The Democrats were in shambles, torn between the so-called moderates and the progressives, while Donald Trump had somehow clawed his way back into the spotlight, snatching the Republican nomination once again. He watched as the Democratic Party tried to pull itself together. He threw his weight behind Kamala Harris, hoping to secure what he saw as the continuation of his legacy. His speech at the Democratic National Convention? Electrifying. He painted a picture of hope, of leadership, of a nation that could still be saved. But beneath the inspiration was something else. A warning. He reminded Americans of the chaos, the destruction, the unraveling of democracy that had taken place under Trump. He made it clear. The stakes had never been higher. But when the votes were counted, the unthinkable happened. Kamala Harris lost. Badly. The Democrats were blindsided, scrambling to make sense of how everything had collapsed. Had they miscalculated? Had they ignored the pain and anger of the working class? Had they been too comfortable assuming Trump was a relic of the past? Whatever the reason, the results were clear. America had chosen to take a sharp turn back to the past. He took it personally. He had poured everything into this election, believing that Harris was the key to keeping his vision alive. But the voters had spoken, and what they said was loud and clear. They weren't buying what the Democrats were selling. And for a while, he disappeared. No press conferences, no op-eds, no grand statements. Just silence. In December 2024, at his foundation's annual Democracy Forum, he dropped a bombshell that left the entire country reeling. He wasn't done with politics, not even close. But this time, he wasn't just backing candidates. He was building a movement, and not just any movement, a force designed to bypass the traditional party system entirely. No third party, no rebellion against the Democrats, but something far more ambitious. A way to connect directly with the disillusioned, the fed up, the ones who had checked out of politics altogether. He called out the rot in the system, the lies, the corruption, the apathy that had poisoned democracy. He warned about the creeping authoritarianism, the way disinformation was eating away at truth itself. But he wasn't just talking about problems, he had a plan. And that plan? It wasn't about Washington insiders, it was about the people. His initiative, tentatively named Next America, was set to become a nationwide network aimed at energizing young voters, amplifying grassroots activism, and preparing a new generation of leaders to shake up the establishment. Forget the usual political machine. This was about raw, direct action. Local elections, city councils, state legislatures, places where real change actually happened, far from the spectacle of presidential politics. And at the heart of it all, the power of digital strategy. The goal was simple: take back the narrative, cut through the noise, and rally the future of America before it was too late. Predictably, the reactions were mixed. Some Democrats embraced it, seeing it as a much-needed wake-up call after their humiliating defeat. Others, especially the party's old guard, weren't thrilled. To them, his move felt like a challenge, an unspoken accusation that they had failed. And the Republicans? They wasted no time twisting his words, painting him as a power-hungry ex-president who refused to step aside. But regardless of the criticism, he was making it clear he wasn't fading into the background. He was stepping into a role no former president had ever taken before. He wasn't just offering advice. He was actively shaping the battlefield. Meanwhile, speculation ran wild about Michelle Obama. She had always insisted she had no interest in running for office, but with her husband making such a bold move, people couldn't help but wonder. She was speaking out more, doubling down on voting rights and education reform, making more public appearances. Was she preparing for something bigger? She denied it, but the whispers wouldn't die down. The question wasn't whether he still had influence, it was whether he was about to change American politics forever. And by the looks of it, he just might. His movement was taking shape fast. Organizers were already laying the groundwork in major swing states, setting up networks to engage communities that had been overlooked by both parties. The strategy was clear: hit the places Washington had ignored, build influence from the ground up, and prepare for the long game. It wasn't just about the next election cycle, it was about reshaping the way Americans engaged with politics altogether. The implications were staggering. If Next America succeeded, it could permanently alter the balance of power in American politics. It could render traditional party machinery obsolete, shifting the focus away from elite decision-makers and toward grassroots movements. And for those who had spent their careers climbing the political ladder the old-fashioned way, that was a terrifying thought. The scope of this initiative went beyond elections. He envisioned it as a platform for education, civic engagement, and leadership training. Workshops were being organized in major cities, with plans to expand into rural areas. Online forums were being established to foster direct conversations between leaders and citizens. It wasn't just a campaigning, it was a restructuring of how political discourse functioned in the digital age. This was only the beginning. With the first chapters of his new movement unfolding, he was not simply reminiscing about the past. He was crafting the blueprint for a new political era. Town halls were being scheduled, community-led initiatives were gaining traction, and digital platforms